My brothers and sisters, we were asking a question: are you prepared or are you ready to be a spouse? Whether it's a husband or a wife, are you ready to be a spouse? Do you have what it takes to be a spouse? Many young children, as they're growing older, they get to the age of 15, 16, 18, 19, and they start saying, I want to get married. Are you serious? Do you know the qualities that are required for a person to qualify to be a spouse, for a person to qualify to be a husband or a wife? There are qualities that are needed, and subhanAllah, many people, because they are sexually active and because maybe they're feeling like, they're ready to be a father somehow, or they want to be a mother, or they just want to be sexually active, they want to get married. That is not a qualification for you to be material worth being a spouse. Remember this.
There was this recent trend, I would say in the last 10, 15 years or so, when a lot of young people started getting religious. They were told, listen, the sunnah is that you get married young, right? And it was like, okay, that's great. The sunnah is you get married young. I want to protect my deen. I want to stay out of fitna. I need to get married young. And we went ahead and got a lot of young people married. And what we saw is that there was a lot of problems with divorce in those relationships. And these are practicing, quote unquote, religious brothers and sisters, people who you would consider to be religious and they're good and all that kind of stuff. And the question is, why are they still getting divorced? What's the problem? Are they bad Muslims? Are they not pious? Are they whatever? And one of the things that we have seen, this from my experience when talking to people and doing couples counseling and all that, especially with young people, because I do work more so with young people, is that you may find a brother, he enters into a marriage and he doesn't know how to relate to a woman. He doesn't understand the simple fact that a woman will have a different perspective at times, that a woman in certain situations will think very differently than you, and there's nothing you can do to change her, right? You can't make her think the way you're thinking, right? And that's just a different perspective looking at it. So a guy may not even understand. The same thing on the sister's side. They may not understand that in certain ways, guys just think differently and they perceive things differently. And not understanding that basic fact can cause a lot of problems early on in the marriage. Not understanding the basics of marriage and relationships. A lot of guys getting married and not understanding that they're now responsible for another human being. My whole life I was responsible for myself, and that's it, right? Now I have to run a household, now I have to budget my finances and stuff like that. So educating yourself about what marriage really is. And I honestly believe we do have this romanticized idea of what marriage is. Don't get me wrong, if a marriage is right, there's a lot of romance in it as well. But that's not all marriage is. Along with the romance and all the good times or whatever, it's a huge responsibility. And there's a reason why the Prophet ﷺ called it half of your religion. If it wasn't a big responsibility, what would give it the merit to be considered half of your religion? Obviously, there's a lot that's going to be required from you, and obviously there's a lot of room for reward as well, if you're patient and if you're able to deal with those things. As the Prophet ﷺ said, Ya ma'ashara shabab, man istata'a minkum al-ba'a falyatazawwaj. He said, oh young people, whoever is able to get married, or whoever can afford to get married, then they should get married. And whoever is not able to, then they should lower their gaze. In one narration, in another narration it mentions that they should fast. So the Sharia also talks about the ability, or being able to afford to get married. The ability actually falls in a different category.
Number one, do you know how to interact with people? Do you know how to speak to people? Have you learned how to talk to others? Do you know how to communicate? If you don't have communication skills, you cannot succeed in a marriage. You're not yet ready to get married. You might think, I've been dating, I've been doing this, I've been doing that. It's very different. You need to know how to communicate, number one. You need to know how to talk, how to come across. You need to know how to word things. You need to know when you want something, you don't just blurt it out as though you're addressing, someone who's of no value. The most valuable person in your life, the person who in your family who has high value, your own spouse, you will be addressing. So you've got to know how to speak. And I think many men don't actually bother. They don't even care. And a lot of women as well, they don't care how it comes out. They say it as it is because that's their spouse, that's the husband, that's the wife. Say it as you want. That is not how it should be. It is supposed to be said in a way that is very attractive. It makes one feel the love, feel the kindness, feel the care within the statement. So you know how to talk to someone.
Before a young man gets married in our times nowadays, you know, they've watched a few movies here and there before they made tawbah and they became religious. And they have this idea of what love is and what marriage is. And, you know, brothers come up to me all the time, brother, man, I gotta get married, man. You know, as though like in their head, once they get married, all their temptations are just gonna poof, disappear. And life is gonna be bliss and we're gonna read Quran together, you know. And, you know, it's gonna be just a spiritual experience, right? And there's this fantastic view of what marriage really is. Those of you that are married are probably not even laughing right now because they're like, what? Because, what is he talking about? Because you don't even remember feeling that way, right?
The Sharia requires from you that you are able to provide for your spouse. The basic necessities that you can provide for them. Obviously, those expectations change in like modern day society where our basic necessities are not so basic anymore. As some scholars mention, you have some type of a trade. And that's how they mentioned back in the day. What that means is, for us, it means you have a means of attaining money. So you have some type of profession, something that you can kind of count on to say, okay, if I have this, I will be able to, inshallah ta'ala, provide for my spouse.
If you're like in your 20s, and every time you have a break, every time you have time off from school or a weekend off, you're spending it behind a screen with a PlayStation 3 or a 4 or an Xbox or whatever else, then you're not a man yet. Go, first of all, get a job even while you're in high school and college. I don't care. Get a job. It'll turn you into a man. It'll make you ready for marriage. Just because you find girls pretty doesn't mean you're ready to get married. That doesn't mean that. You have to show some responsibility to be able to stand on your own 2 feet. And parents of teenage children, if you're not pushing your children to do work, you're like, alhamdulillah, I can afford it. I'm a doctor, I'm an engineer, I'm a business owner. I can afford it. My children don't have to work. I don't care if you're like changing tires at a car shop, you know, at a mechanic shop. I don't care if you're lawn mowing, but do work. It will give you respect for money. It gives you respect and responsibility. It prepares you for life. I made a case to my parents when I was 20 that I want to get married. But you know what? I had been working 40 hours a week since I was 16 in New York City. I've never worked less than 40 hours a week. That was an easy week for me. And I've been going full-time to college, you know, in high school. I actually took a longer time to graduate out of college because I had work. I never once took money from my parents for college tuition. I refused that. I said, no way. If I can't afford it, I'm not going to college. I'll work on it myself. I worked in shoe stores. I worked in surgical places. I worked in like local Queens newspapers. I've done all kinds of crazy jobs. I even worked at a Desi grocery store. Ew. Oh my God. But I worked there for one day, but I did, and I'm proud of it. I'm not ashamed of it. But you know why I'm telling you this? I'm telling you this because there's no shame in working. It's part of what makes you who you are. I got married at the age of 22, but I can argue I had a right to. I was on my own for quite some time. I was taking care of my own responsibilities, you know? And if you're doing that, then don't expect the highest things. And my in-laws are crazy. They're just crazy. You know, I got married 6 months after I got laid off. I didn't have a job and I got married. I didn't get married because I had the money. I got married because my in-laws felt that I was good for it. That was it. I could prove myself to them.
Something which the scholars of the past would often talk about, and that is, are you educated enough to get married? What I'm talking about here is not like a bachelor's or a master's or a PhD. I'm talking about religious education. Do you understand what you need to know in order to get married? So the scholars of the past, they would say that it is actually forbidden for a person to get married if they don't understand the rulings of marriage and divorce, right? So that's another that comes under ability as well.
You need to be very, very patient. Patience is the cornerstone. Patience is a quality that is required for you to be qualified as a person ready to get married. If you don't have patience, I'm sorry, you're not yet ready. So it doesn't mean that just because you're sexually able, you can now get married. No. If you don't have patience, you don't know how to talk to people, I think you need to hold on. You need to do courses on this. Be very patient. There will be statements that are said. There will be things. There will be problems. There will be issues. How do you address them? You know, they say you be responsible. When something goes wrong, you need to be able to respond in a proper way. So if you don't have patience, you end up divorcing people, you end up not realizing that the problems can be resolved, the matters can be resolved. You need to learn to be slightly selfless. Don't be selfish. If you're selfish, you're not going to get along even with the best of the globe. You won't get along because you're selfish. So like I say, it doesn't mean that now I'm 20, 21, 22, I need to get married, 25, whatever you are, 26. No. Did you develop your qualities? Do you know that, for example, it doesn't mean you can afford a car and you've bought a car that you can now drive the car. You need a license. So you need to learn how to talk to people. You need to be patient. You need to be selfless to a great degree. Learn to accommodate others. If you don't know how to accommodate others, you may not be ready to get married. Sometimes you don't like to do certain things. You have to learn to like to do certain things that you may not ideally like to do, simply to put a smile on the faces of those whom you love. So you need to know this. You need to understand this. My brothers and sisters, sometimes we don't like certain things. We must make sure that we make our folks happy by engaging and participating in what makes them happy. So this is the reason why it's important for us to actually develop these qualities before we get married.
And when you're a young person and you're growing up and you want to get married, even when you get married, Allah has called you a half. You are a half. Whether you're a man or a woman, you're a half. Why has Allah said that? Adam alayhi salam in Jannah, he was sitting down and he felt there's something missing in his life. He wasn't fully happy with all of Jannah. And from his rib was created Hawa. This is in the Sahih Hadith. And then he found his sukoon. Allah has said in the Holy Quran, in Surah number 30, Surah Ankabut, verse number 21, He said, لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, so that you may find tranquility, calmness by staying with her. And the same applies to the woman, so that the woman may find tranquility with the man. Allah has said in the Holy Quran, وَالْمُحْصَنَاتُ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ, He has said those women who have entered the fortress. What does that mean? That the women who get married, women who will show their dignity and their pride and their honor in what? In securing themselves with yourself as a husband inside one fortress. And you will do the same thing. You are muhsineen. Allah has called you muhsineen. In Surah Nisa, Allah has called you muhsineen as men. Allah has called them muhsanat. That you have taken yourself in a fortress, she's taken herself in a fortress. You are together, bound together. And this nikah is a promise. It's a contract. It's a contract in front of Allah. Though you're not signing anything, you don't have to sign anything, but your word, the Muslim's tongue, is going to be held responsible on the Day of Judgment. Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, he was asked a question. His question was a very simple question. And Sayyidina Ali gave 8 words to this answer. How many words? 8 words. But in these 8 words, he covered the whole of what I might cover with you in 1 or 2 or 3 nights. Subhanallah. Allah gave Sayyidina Ali balagha. He gave fasah and balagha. Sayyidina Ali, he could say a few things and it had so much rich meaning to it. So what did he ask him? The question was simple. The question was, what is marriage? What is marriage? What is it all about? Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu said first, he said, marriage is sururu shahrin. And he said, what's after that? Sayyidina Ali said, ghumumu dahrin. What's after that? He said, kusuru dhahrin. What's after that? He said, nuzulu qabrin. That's it. 8 words. 4 couplets, 8 words, summed the whole thing up. Subhanallah, what a job he did. Number 1, his answer was, sururu shahrin. What is marriage? Sayyidina Ali said, it is a month's worth of happiness. You guys thinking, month, 1 month, 30 days. 1 month worth of happiness. It didn't literally mean a month worth of happiness. It meant, basically the beginning, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever, you got your wife saying, darling, what should I cook you? Parathas on the table, even for breakfast, right? And everything is running like clockwork, everything. That's when the golden days are. And guys, when you get married, and girls, when you get married, enjoy it. Because there's a time when that's not going to be there anymore. You're going to be ending up with your cornflakes on your breakfast table. End up with your little crunchy nut and the rest of it. And even if you want breakfast, she'll probably be snoring and telling you, to go and get it yourself. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu said, he said, sururu shahrin, then he said, ghumumu dahrin. The next thing he said was, ghumumu dahrin. He said, it's the whole lifetime worth of, it's a lifetime's worth of responsibility. And then Sayyidina Ali was asked, what's after that? He said, well, your back gets bent. Kusuru zahrin. He said, what's after that? He said, nuzulu qabrin, time to go to the grave. Now you might think, what? I'm not getting married. 1 month after that, I get so much pressure that I get back bent and I go in the grave. Is that it? Now subhanAllah, Sayyidina Ali said a beautiful thing. Because he linked marriage, he linked it to the next world. Sayyidina Ali linked it with the grave right at the end. Why? Because marriage is not just about this world. And the people who get married, after a while, they realize that it's not just about this world. The whole akhirah depends on marriage. The whole of the next life depends on marriage. And why the Rasulullah said, his nikah or your marriage is half of your faith. Why he said half of your faith is because you and your wife together, you're going to complete faith. You're going to complete your iman. First thing a person thinks of when marriage is coming up and so on is, you're just thinking about sururu shahrin. The first part of Sayyidina Ali's qawl, first part of his part, he said, that month's worth. For some people it's 2 months, some people it's 3 months, 4 months. Some people it lasts for a year. I've met some brothers, even after 1.5 years, they've still got that smile from one earlobe to another earlobe. Right? The brother, mashallah, is looked after, yeah? But that's good. And even sisters as well, some of them, they have a wonderful time. But there's a time when responsibilities are going to come. And when responsibilities come, it's not about sururu shahrin anymore, it's about ghumumu dahrin. You're going to start thinking now. It's a very serious thing. It's not just get in there, get out there. It's not that. No. Those sisters, those brothers who are married and who've been married, they know what it is. Because you know what? The biggest thing you're going to have to deal with is learning about one another. You have to learn about one another. For you to live on your own as a bachelor, it's easy. You get up in the morning, you wear what you want, get out the door, come back when you want, done. When you're married, you can't do that. You can't do what you want, come home when you want, this and that. You've got a responsibility. You've got a responsibility and you've got to think about that. You've got to take it seriously.